Welcome to Drew Code Sports Talk, everybody. I am your host, Cody Johnson, where we talk about life, sports, and everything in between. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for allowing us to take a break last week. We've been running pretty hard the last few weeks, so we just needed one more week to just kind of get rested and get going. And if you didn't see, there was a couple of guest spots that I did for the Out of Pocket podcast ran by Michael Davis, which, funny enough, he's actually joining us today on this episode. So stay tuned. Couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Obviously, click on post notifications so you get notified when new videos come out. And also check us out on all your podcast episodes as well. Spotify, iHeart, Apple. We're available on all of them. So please go follow us over there and on social media. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to thank you guys so much for joining and supporting after all this time. And now, who is in the batter's box? We're ready to come up. Is, of course, the president of Boom Broadcasting. I'm really glad I said that because the last couple of times I've butchered it really badly, and he's been really gracious to me, so I want to make sure I get the name right. And we have my guy, Michael Davis. What's up, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm in the batter's box. Let's go.
Like
my team won the World Series, not this year, but last year.
Yep,
so
that's right.
Hopefully I can have a good swing.
You guys actually won it with the Giants' former skipper, Bruce Bochy. So I think he won us 3 World Series, in fact. So,
bro, I hated the San Francisco Giants. I don't really like a San Francisco team. I guess you can, disclude the Warriors out of that because Curry's just so exciting. But yeah, once he came to Texas, I was like, okay, now I can actually like him.
That's funny. Well, everyone always thinks that because we're Giants fans that we automatically root for the Niners, and that's further from the truth. We're Raiders fans, diehard, and if anything, if it's not a Chiefs fan, it's the Niners that you also don't root for, California or not. Because I remember the Super Bowl, of course, that just happened, Chiefs and Niners in Vegas, which was the worst Super Bowl for the Raiders. They were like, oh, you should root for the Niners. At least it's, it's former California. And my buddy and I were like, no, if we could, this Super Bowl would just not happen. Both two teams would lose and no one would win the Super Bowl. That's all that we would want. That'd be a Raiders Super Bowl. But nevertheless, though, here we are. So,
wow, dude. Yeah, that must have been really bad for you right there.
We hated it, and nothing was worse than seeing Patrick Mahomes win it in our building. So yes, I've got some feelings about that, of course.
Dude, it's literally like your worst nightmare.
Yeah, couldn't get any worse, to be truthful. Like, I would have much rather had any other team besides the 2 that played this past year. But fortunately, it's not in Vegas, so we don't have to worry about it. So it's just now everybody else's home game when we play them because, Vegas just sells out to every other team other than the Raiders. So that's what I don't like seeing.
Yeah, it's hey, it's not looking good for my team either with just hearing all the other fans, fill up Jerry's world.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, man, I didn't know how to segue into this, but I think we just got to get right into it. But
we don't have to segue into that. It's okay. It's okay.
Well, okay, let's do this then before we segue. We'll take the Band-Aid off a little bit. We'll get warmed up. So, Michael, of course, as I led off, you're the president of Boom Broadcasting, and from what I saw, dude, you lead a plethora of different shows, man. So why don't you introduce the audience to who you are and like what inspired so there we go. Boom Broadcasting.
Well, it's been quite a journey, man. It's been a lot. So I went to App State, graduated with a broadcasting degree, rolled years, graduated during COVID. So it was 2021. I had no path. I had nothing. I was working at a YMCA camp at the time, and I just didn't know how to get involved. Well, one of my buddies was doing a show for a local sports station virtually. Oh, okay. And so I was a guest on his a few times. He had me guest host it one time, and that ended up being my I didn't know it at the time, but my audition. Okay. And I ended up coming up with Out of Pocket and ran that on the station. I had my wrestling podcast I did personally that got put on the station. Okay. I ended up doing a Carolina Panthers podcast, which I'm not a Panthers fan, but it's the area here in North Carolina. And then I ended up, getting out of the YMCA job, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I thought about doing Boom Broadcasting. starting last August, like 15 months ago.
Okay.
Well, I end up going in the hospital around my birthday. Very, very serious thing, about 10, 11 days in the hospital, an entire fall of just bed rest and
Oh, wow.
recovery. And I ended up like putting pause on all my podcasts. And then at the start of the new year, I started slowly getting back into it.
Mhm.
And then in the spring, me and Mike, who does nightcaps on Boom Broadcasting, recapping some wrestling shows live after Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, pay-per-views. Me and him were talking, and he was like, you could do this, right? And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
do what? He's like, you could have your own channel and everything. I'm like, well, I had this idea way back when, and
Mhm.
we stayed up like it was a college all-nighter. We had an assignment due the next morning. Like, we stayed up till 4 a.m. just
wow.
brainstorming all the possibilities. And I was like, we could do this. So I started getting stuff together and, ended up launching it. We had over 100 subscribers before we ever like dropped in a video.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
So we announced it a week in advance, and everybody just decided to, subscribe and support. And then started out with 4 different people doing content that first week. And now it's grown and grown and grown to where we have over, in a normal week, we have over 20 podcasts dropping each week, whether they're live stream, whether they're pre-recorded, whether it's wrestling or sports or a certain team or a certain league, or there's a guy who does a TV show review. I do a podcast more about life and some of the stuff I've had to deal with and overcome. Like, my passion is I want people to talk about what they're passionate about and have that escape. So that's the vision for it. That's how it came to be. And it's been quite a journey because we're 4 months going strong.
Yeah, dude. So it's, to me, like when I was doing a little bit of research, I was like looking, I was like, man, there's just show after show after show, literally anything that you're looking for. You want a baseball show, we got a guy for that. You looking for a basketball guy, Jason, who I got to meet when I guest appeared on your show, which, by the way, I've been meaning to tell you this. I keep forgetting. He reminds me of Brian Windhorse of ESPN a lot. Like I sometimes want to call him Windy because he looks like, and sometimes kind of sounds like Windy. And I was like, dude, if this guy doesn't see that he looks like, that kind of is like Brian Windhorse like that's to me what I see. So anyways, so you got a guy that does that. You got your wrestling show, and then you got Podcast Smitty, who does another thing on the side. So how many shows do you have on your network?
Bro, I keep losing count. Okay. I mean, we have Out of Pocket, which I guess you could count as one, but we usually do 4 times a week.
You're right.
But you have Out of Pocket, you have Nightcaps multiple times a week. You got Quick Hits twice a week. You got Dugout Debrief, the baseball show. You got Lombardi Party, the Packers podcast. You have 2 Dad and the Boys talking about Cowboys. You have my dad's show, Starstruck. You have Jason's basketball show. You have Jason and Wayne's fantasy football show. You have my wrestling podcast. You have the Man Behind the Mic.
We're at 11.
I feel like I'm missing one too. Like,
probably
this is the worst part. I'm like, Sean's It Stinks. It's a TV show review. His Wrestling of Destiny. I guess 13.
So the 13. Yeah.
13.
Holy moly. So okay. Now we're down this rabbit hole. Before we get into the questions, how do you keep track of all this? Or like, what's the organization process like when you're running that stuff?
It's still trying to get figured out, obviously. A lot of different stuff has happened over the last few days that I'm trying to, organize, but it's a team, man. I couldn't do it by myself. I've been responsible for a lot of the YouTube uploads. But when I, was gone for a weekend, somebody else stepped up and upload episodes.
There you go.
People always are, sharing on their socials, and I really believe in the team aspect because there's so many good podcasts like you guys, like Drew Code Sports Talk. Like you're a good podcast, and I want people to, do their passion, talk about their passion. So, using that team aspect to it, like they have a chance to be like, oh, I'm not just dropping a podcast and we have 3 subscribers.
Yeah.
It's we've built up, at least 400 now. I think we're at the 450-ish. We're inching closer to that 500.
Yeah, you're getting there.
Slowly but surely. But it, like, I really want people to have their voice be heard.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of graphic design. It's a lot of promotion. It's a lot of, hey guys, go show this person some love. Like go comment, go share it with a friend. Like whatever we can do to support each other. That's what I want it to be.
Yeah. Well, by the way, thank you for the compliment, by the way. And I know we talked right before we jumped on, and just getting to share just a little bit of our perspective of like how we got to this point, and sometimes the comments, the nuances of it all. But I really appreciate the compliment. But I also want to pay you a compliment that when I was invited on the first time and I got to meet Jason, I got to meet Wayne, obviously you and I were both there. And then even the second time, I can't remember the guy's name. He was the Atlanta Falcons fan.
Dom.
Okay. So everyone that I've met has been really, 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 really cool. And like I had mentioned, sometimes we get invited and, not everyone's show is as welcoming, because sometimes sports podcasting, it sounds like you need to be, I don't want to say controversial, but you need to almost be like saying something that is offensive or abrasive to the point where you're getting two different perspectives. You get people that side with it or disagree with it, rather than like this kind of casual conversation where we can talk sports and everyone's thoughts are like heard and understood. Like, yeah, I can get that, which is like kind of the intent of why Drew and I created this show, is so that way, like, we see things same perspective about 75% of the time. The other 25%, it's fun to jab about, but not to insult to where like, well, I don't want to share anything anymore, kind of the thing. And so to just feel how welcoming it was from different people that I have no idea who they are. We got a Knicks fan on there. Like I said, we had an Atlanta Falcons fan. We had a Baltimore fan on there. We have you, a Cowboys fan. Just like it was all like, hey, it's cool if you're a Raiders fan. No hate here. We all love sports. So that's just what we're going to do. So I just want to pay you that compliment that the vibes felt great on when I was invited on. And so you're doing something right, and you got a great cast of crew that's helping you run your network. So,
bro, that is one of the best compliments you could have paid me. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
That means a lot.
Yeah, man. So, okay. Now that I mentioned you're a Cowboys fan, I think this is the only way we can segue into it. And then we can get more into the deep dive of Michael, because yeah, I know. Well, we were acknowledging you, and now we have to unacknowledge the Cowboys because they're just not it this year, man. So I know that you're well aware of comments that like Micah had made about his coach. And obviously the season, very similar to the Raiders, has been super underwhelming. You guys had playoff aspirations and looking to make huger strides than you did last year. So how do you feel being a Cowboys fan this year with kind of everything that's happened up to this point?
It was definitely a punch in the mouth. I did not think we would win the division. I think it was going to be Philly. I thought Washington actually had a really good chance if they caught lightning in a bottle, which they have. But I was like, this is a 10 or 11 win team. This had a lot of the guys who came back, or if we didn't, we replaced them in the draft. We just didn't replace anybody in free agency.
Right.
That was the most frustrating part. Is you heard the comments, Jerry Jones, I'm all in. We're going all in. And I'm like, we don't sign Derrick Henry. Okay. I mean, Saquon goes inside the division. Josh Jacobs goes to the Packers.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, they're looking at somebody. And then they don't draft a running back, period. And then you're like, okay, maybe they just didn't like anybody. And then they signed Zeke. And I was like, oh, let's go. Like, Zeke behind the Cowboys offensive line always does good, has the energy, has the vibes. And then they're just letting Zeke sit on the sideline and rot on the sideline. It's like, okay, well, it's 3rd and 2. And instead you're going to go 4 wide receivers. And it's just, what are we doing? Like there's no like recipe. And then of course, I mean, you know this as well as I do. Once you get one injury and you get a second and you get a third, you just, you can't overcome. It didn't help that CD was holding out of the entire train camp and preseason. So now he's like using the first few weeks as September football to try to get like some sort of rapport with Dak. And now when he doesn't, he's yelling at Dak and he's sobbing on the sideline, which I like CD. He's really good. He's played through a lot. He played through that shoulder injury a couple weeks ago. That was just brutal.
He is by far your guys' best player on, I mean, I would say Micah on defense, of course, but CD, transformed that offense last year. I mean, just a
Mhm.
target machine last year. And maybe because you guys have Kellen Moore. So, no, he's on the
No, he's
Eagles
in
now, right?
Philadelphia.
Okay, so when you guys had Kellen Moore, he was just getting fed the ball like crazy, right?
Mhm.
And now that that's not there, obviously, of course, receiver holdouts, I don't think anyone really talks about as much. And you pointed this out. It's a ramp up to get there, and to use all of September to kind of get warmed up and to, get back on track. It's a little too late sometimes,
And that's my point. That's the most frustrating part is Jerry had no sense of urgency in free
Mhm.
agency, but we're going all in. The players had no sense of urgency in the preseason that we're going to use regular season games that matter towards
Right.
your record to like get in sync. And at that point, it's just too late.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's been really hard. It's been worse watching my dad because me and him started that Cowboys podcast because we're partnering Boom Broadcasting with Fans First Sports Network.
Oh, yeah.
And doing that podcast
Oh, yeah. I
together.
was watching it before we jumped on. That's right.
And it's so heartbreaking, man. My dad's so optimistic. He's not a glass half full kind of guy. He's a glass full kind of guy.
Okay, right
He
on.
will never talk bad about the Cowboys. But just seeing like his heart break
Yeah.
because of this season, is tough.
Yeah. Well, tell me about it. So as Raider fans, I think we were running on the optimism that, we had like a 5-4 record in the season and all this hope. And then for us to look like a team that has a rookie head coach, no starting, like maybe a fringe starting quarterback. And then to think that we were going to be prevalent in the league, I think we were fooling ourselves. So, I mean, if there's any team that knows about, underwhelming expectations, it's definitely Raiders and Cowboys. I think we can come to an agreement on that. Now, with Micah Parsons' comments about Mike McCarthy, I've already been on the record in saying that I don't think Mike McCarthy was going to last this season. To my opinion, Mike McCarthy would have had to gone to another NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl to keep his job. I thought he was already going to be let go regardless. But with Micah's comments, what's more troubling, the fact that Micah has made those comments and it's kind of been accepted, or like that Mike McCarthy's coaching job has got you guys to this point?
I would definitely say, in terms of Micah's comments, probably not the best way to use your words, because definitely people have run with it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of frustration. When you're like upset and you don't like say what you're thinking, but it kind of slips out a little bit, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I probably shouldn't have phrased it like that because that shows how frustrated I am internally.
Mhm.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
Micah, I think the way he meant it is Mike McCarthy could, ride out the rest of this year and he can eventually, get a coaching job somewhere and he can have another opportunity.
Right.
He's not on the football field. Zach Martin, is the veteran Micah Parsons said he wanted to hold the trophy for.
Yeah.
Zach's getting to the end of his career. Zach
Right.
might even be on his last season. Definitely with the Cowboys, probably just in general.
Mhm.
Zach Martin's not even had a great year.
Right.
He has been uncharacteristically bad, but he hasn't had much help at right tackle, and he's
had major injuries throughout his career too. And he's played a lot of snaps. Like I remember when you guys had DeMarco Murray, and this is when you guys had the number one offensive line with Zeke as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a part of that. And that was almost 10 years ago now.
He's the only one remaining on that team.
Right.
So that is that's been tough. That's been tough to watch. Zach Martin just, not get his opportunity. And that's been the theme. Like Jason Witten, how much he put in, didn't get his opportunity. DeMarcus Ware had to go to Denver and win Super Bowl 50 with the Broncos. Tony Romo didn't get his opportunity. Like there's so many like key guys you really want to like hold that trophy or at least go to the big game.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened. But I feel like Micah Minute is like Mike McCarthy. He could get another job next year and be fine. Zach Martin, that's not the case. But I do think Mike McCarthy probably lasts the rest of the year, just for monetary reasons. We're not going to the playoffs now. I mean, I feel like I've accepted that. So an in-season change with Mike Zimmer taking over, or Brian Schottenheimer, who won't be back next year. I feel like Mike McCarthy is just going to ride out the rest of the year. They're not going to bring him back, and hopefully Dallas looks at not say Mike McCarthy is not competent, but like somebody who can coach football in 2025 and get this offense moving and going.
What coach would you want the Cowboys to go after?
So I have a bone to pick with 49ers fans saying that, the sky's falling and they should fire Kyle Shanahan. If Shanahan's on the market, bro, I want him 100%.
Yeah. If
100%.
Now I'm a huge AP fan. I know that his first 10 weeks don't show it, but I actually really like AP. He's a different coach than what I've experienced as my whole fandom as a Raider fan. If Kyle Shanahan was on the market, I would be cool with AP leaving and then we get Kyle Shanahan. He makes a difference.
Shanahan, if he gets fired, he would have a job literally 10 minutes before he gets fired. Like,
there's a reason why people hire from the Andy Reid tree, Kyle Shanahan tree, and Sean McVay tree. There's a reason for that. It's not because, they have names and numbers and all that. No, Mike McDaniels came from Kyle Shanahan, and up until some injuries and all that stuff, they were the number one offense in the league. That's from the Shanahan tree. And there's a huge reason why he's very successful in San Francisco.
So I think for a team to be successful, in most cases, they need a really great offensive mind who understands not what the game is now, because if they're stuck in their ways, it's not going to work. They need to have an innovative mindset. And I think that's what's going to separate Mike McCarthy from the Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. I feel like Ben does have a lot of talent in Detroit, so that helps with St. Brown, Montgomery, Gibbs, Laporta, Goff. But not a lot of people had faith in Jared Goff until Ben Johnson. So I feel like Ben Johnson, he didn't take a job last year. He gets it this year. Keep hearing the Bill Belichick rumors. I hear the Mike Vrabel rumors. I'm like, I don't want those guys. They are stuck in their ways. Belichick coaching tree never works. But getting Ben Johnson over would be huge for this team. Yeah.
And that's funny too, because I was going to say, I think Mike Vrabel would really work for your guys' team. And it's not because, look, I agree. The Belichick tree does not branch well. I think Mike Vrabel is on a short list of coaches that did really well in Tennessee. But also, too, like his team didn't look great even after Arthur Smith had left, because when he was the OC, they had Ryan Tannehill. They looked pretty good, and they had AJ Brown at the time, a prime Derrick Henry, totally different look. And then when that offense kind of went away, and Vrabel defensive mind was really leaning on the defense, they really didn't have enough points to put up there. But I think ultimately, in my opinion, Vrabel would be a really good coach to have, just in terms of character and the locker room sense, because of like what Micah Parsons says. I don't think Micah Parsons makes that comment with a Mike Vrabel being the coach of the team, just because I think what Vrabel brings is just this level of respect and accountability that players like Micah wouldn't dare say that, because it's definitely not the coach. It's, they would argue execution and stuff like that. And I don't even think Mike Vrabel got a fair shot in Tennessee when he was dismissed, because if I'm not mistaken, Tennessee had a winning record when he left last year, and they just were looking to blow the whole thing up anyways. So, but that's why I think Mike Vrabel would work. And then my master plan would be Vrabel's your guys' head coach, Belichick is your guys' DC. With, if they did keep Micah, I think that would be a very interesting coaching establishment. But what about that offense, which is what you guys have kind of put a staple on the last 5 years for sure.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, not saying Mike Vrabel's a bad coach,
right?
Belichick either, but the way teams work, they usually have innovative offensive minds, and those are the ones you see at the top of the charts. There's the rare outlier with Buffalo, with Sean McDermott being a defensive minded guy. But you see your Andy Reids, you see your Mike McDaniel, you see your Kyle Shanahan. Like, that is the route a lot of these teams are going. I wouldn't hate, because Mike Vrabel isn't even a defensive coordinator right now. I wouldn't hate Vrabel as a DC,
right?
And pairing with Ben Johnson running that offense. So that could also be something that we could look forward to.
Yeah, I'm not sure who because I got to be honest. I don't know if Ben Johnson is leaving for the Cowboys just because I think it's Jerry Jones is going to really rub people the wrong way, especially after this. And I got to be honest, this is the first year I've seen Jerry Jones kind of say some stuff out of left field that I'm shocked that he said. And I've been hearing Jerry Jones comments for years, right? And it's definitely not the worst thing he's ever said, but I think what he's saying does hold weight for like other coaching candidates. And I just don't know if like 10 years ago, he was getting by with Jason Garrett making these, and then he still somehow had, Kellen Moore calling plays for him. And now that he really doesn't have that, he has Mike McCarthy, who's dealt with this now for 4 or 5 years now. I don't know what other prominent coach that's up and rising is going to look at that and say, yeah, I can do that.
It's weird because it's like maybe we can rely on the Dallas Cowboys brand. Like it's the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
Jerry's going to throw money at whoever. But I will say this, and I'm a wrestling fan. You can see all the memorabilia behind me right here. If you're watching the video feed, Jerry Jones right now makes it feel like Vince McMahon towards the end of his tenure. And I'm not touching on like all the allegations or stuff. I'm touching on Vince McMahon just went crazy. Like
his storytelling and how he was running WWE towards the latter part. Yeah, I agree.
Like, and it was like so unpredictable, and he didn't care what he said. He didn't care who he offended. He didn't care who he hurt. But he was so stuck in his ways because he was like, oh, this worked in the 90s. It'll work now. And Jerry's in that same spot. He's like, this worked in the 90s. And, it wasn't Jimmy Johnson. It was Jerry Jones. And it'll work now. And, we don't have to spend in free agency. We don't have to go after the best running back in the NFL.
Right.
So on and so forth. We don't have to extend our quarterback in the spring and save up that cap space as opposed to sign him like hours before the season starts. Like it's just there's so much frustration because it's like, man, if somebody could get in his ear, I mean,
his son was there for a minute. That's why, because I remember there was a story that came out that he wanted to draft Johnny Manziel. And his son talked him out of it. And ironically enough, I think that's when his son talked him into drafting Zach Martin. Ironically enough. And to be truthful, if this felt like the epitome of a Jerry Jones season, this is it. Why didn't you sign Derrick Henry? Oh, we just couldn't afford it. Oh, okay. This is Mike McCarthy's last year. He's got to prove it. Oh, okay. We just felt like we were really good with Dak, but we just didn't decide to sign him until an hour before kickoff. Like, oh, okay. Like very Jerry Jones-esque, like next level, got to steal every headline, which he has. Like for the most part, you guys are still in sports media heavily when like my Raiders are, one game worse off than you guys are. And not a whisper of anything, but Cowboys run the media. And a lot of it's Jerry Jones of Vince McMahon, wrestling kind of promoter style of stuff,
Wrestling promoter style. That's why Dallas is America's team. People are like, oh, no, it's this one, it's that one. No, like win or lose, no matter the record, like the Dallas Cowboys will always be in the headlines. And you can watch your, whatever sports media outlet you want to, like the Cowboys are going to be there no matter what's happening.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that Jerry Jones has equity within ESPN. Literally, they have him as a segment every single morning. What morning was it where he literally led the headline? Oh, it was when he was on the Fan and he threatened the guy's job. Literally took up the entire 2-hour slot for First Take, which I was kind of like, okay, is there anything else happening in the world of NFL? Because, I'm sure that's not it's not even Jerry Jones's top 10 craziest things that he's done. And it takes up an entire 2-hour block of ESPN. But again, Cowboys, you're right. America's team, for better or for worse. If you're not in the headlines, you're not trying, I guess. So Michael, if you were the GM and you were given the task by Jerry Jones, he said, Michael, I need you to fix this. Do whatever you got to do. What are you doing to turn the Cowboys around?
First of all, that would be an awesome job to have.
Yeah.
If they're hiring, I am looking. So
yeah.
Also, would that be real? Like Jerry gave me full power? Is that a thing? Is that
I don't know. That's true. He would almost Vince McMahon it. Like, yeah, Triple H, you can run the show. Oh no, wait, I have creative decisions. I'm gonna rewrite the story an hour before the show.
That was perfect right there. man, that is tough. To fix the ship, I feel like a lot of the pieces are there. I don't think the solution is trading all your best players or trading Micah for all this draft capital that may or may not hit. Like when you have a dog like Micah Parsons in the building, that's what the Panthers had. Panthers had CMC. Panthers had Brian Burns. Panthers had DJ Moore. And they're like, oh, let's trade it all away to get Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick. And the year later, you could have gotten Caleb Williams. I mean, that's what we're looking at. So I really think, again, hiring an innovative offensive mind like Ben Johnson would solve a lot. I would look at that offensive line, and I would look at that defensive line. Offensive line, Zach Martin's probably retiring. If that's the case, you need to wipe out that right side of the line. Zach Martin, you need a new right guard that you can find free agency or the draft. Terrence Steele still can't block. He still can't block. So you could even put Tyler Smith out at left tackle. You could have Tyler Guyton move out to right tackle. TJ Bass does pretty good when he's been in there at left guard. And then that way you only have to fill out the right guard. Wide receiver, you got CeeDee Lamb. You just trade for Jonathan Mingo. Who knows what Mingo looks like in a Cowboys offense versus a Carolina Panthers offense. So there's still some hope there.
Fourth pick, he better be the truth. So,
and then you got to get a dog at running back. You missed out on Derrick Henry. Look at the free agency class. See if there's anybody there who could help. But I think fixing the offensive line will help the entire offense move. You look at the defense, and you got a secondary. If they can stay healthy, Deron Bland hasn't played yet this year. Trayvon Diggs has been holding it down. Kalen Carson, Jordan Lewis, could be very serviceable in the slot. But it's all going to start at the defensive line. You have Micah Parsons. You have Marshawn Nealon, who's young. Sam Williams, young, who will be coming back from injury next year. Dallas has been on their 5th and 6th defensive ends for most of the year. By the way, you won't win games with that. But they still didn't fix the run defense. You need dudes at defensive tackle, and you have 2 of them because you run a 4-3. Right. You need to go spend whatever you need, go draft whatever you need to fix that run defense, because you can't win games when teams are running up against you. And then I would look at this draft, and after actually using free agency to help give Dak and whoever the new head coach is, Ben Johnson, it's my approval, you need to go get a good guy in the draft, high in the draft. And whether you have to trade up to number 2, number 3, number 4 just to get this player, I would go for Travis Hunter. Okay. I would go for Travis Hunter. You know that he can play either side of the football. So you could have him at wide receiver to help out CeeDee Lamb. If we have corner injuries like we have this year, put him in the corner at some spots in the NFL. He's not going to play both sides of the football 100% of the time, but he is somebody who is very versatile. I feel like that's what we liked with Micah Parsons. And for some reason, you can't go up and get Travis Hunter. Maybe that is where you get Ashton Genty from Boise State, who's leading the entire country with like 1,900 rushing yards right now. That could be your next Ezekiel Elliott potentially. So this isn't like, you're starting all the way from scratch, but you need a new coaching staff who knows how to use your players, and you need to shore up the most important parts of your team, the offensive and the defensive line, because the game is won or lost in the trenches.
Very true. So it sounds like your plan is more or less like 2 to 3 years turnaround, like refurbishing, not rebuild,
If that, I feel like they have a potential to compete next year if they get the right minds in the building.
I almost want to say that I don't think Mike Zimmer is the true defensive coordinator. I think Brian Flores, like what he's doing in the Vikings, if he got a defensive coordinator gig with the Cowboys, I think that would help a lot, because the way that he runs his fronts is ferocious. And truthfully too, even Mike Zimmer in the Vikings, like he was an okay coach. I don't think he was the reason why they were winning, but that's just me. I would say though, dude, I'm actually surprised. I know that Micah's really young, but you're going to have CD and Dak, both extremely high payrolls. Maybe not. I mean, maybe think about trading Micah for the highest bidder for cap relief and extra draft picks to help this rebuild or expansion. Because eventually, Dak, obviously, his 4-year deal is going to turn into probably a 2.5-year deal at most, right? So, and I know that you mentioned like maybe drafting somebody in this upcoming draft, or which you guys would have to be really bad next year. Maybe look at Archie Manning when he's draft eligible, but you guys would have to be real bad. Like everything but the dog is going, and we're going to accumulate all these picks to rebuild in that fashion and think about the future, But I mean, I think Micah Parsons, dude, being traded is probably not as bad as it sounds. I know he's super young, but he has to get paid. And I don't know. Jerry Jones is strapped for cash now. Imagine after he signs Micah, and he's got to have to sign him to the largest NFL contract in history because defensive ends and quarterback get the most money. And Micah, deservingly so, would warrant a huge contract, well north of whatever TJ Watt is getting or Myles Garrett. He's going to have to reset the market. And is Jerry willing to do that with both Dak and CD?
And it's tough because, like, if Jerry had signed him before, he could have saved at least $6 million on Dak's contract. If he had signed CD before Justin Jefferson, which Lamb and Jefferson had the same agent, so I think the agent knew what he was doing.
Right.
He could have saved an extra $5 million there. There's so much that, like, looking back in hindsight, or heck, looking then, like, you knew what should have been done, and Jerry just didn't do it. So, I mean, if I'm coming in as GM, I got some stuff to fix. But
this is your guy. Yeah, I mean, that's true. If that's your first order, I mean, don't get me wrong, Ben Johnson would definitely change the perception. But I think this is where, like, you taking over in this hypothetical would be huge because you're not Jerry Jones. That, to me, very similar to when the Raiders had Al Davis, and we used to think Al Davis was hindering us. And unfortunately, he passed away, I think in 2011. And we then had to rebuild with getting a GM, but we didn't have the owner kind of making decisions football-wise that maybe we didn't need to make. Now, granted, he was one of the best owners in the NFL, but maybe not the greatest NFL aficionado as this league progressed into what it is like then or today. And, I think if Jerry Jones decided to step away from full football operations, maybe then you get people in there that can make different decisions and, maybe there bears fruit. But, unfortunately, Jerry Jones probably ain't going anywhere unless it's in a box or, if someone carries him out because of some reason. So.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing too, is like, you never wish that on anybody.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But it's tough because it's like that's probably the only way, unless I mean, we mentioned Vince McMahon. Maybe there's some allegations that like pop up.
I don't know what's worse, to wish like someone fall to where they're no longer on this planet, or an allegation comes out that takes them out. I don't know what's worse to wish upon an enemy. So.
No idea. I don't want to wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
That's tough.
All right. So for this will kind of segue into the quarterback topic that I picked out for us. But did you want the Cowboys to re-sign Dak?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel Dak gets a lot of hate. And if you guys watch the Cowboys game against the Eagles, where Dak Prescott was out and Cooper Rush was in, and everybody's remembering when Cooper Rush went on that, 5-1 run when Dak got hurt that time. And you saw Cooper Rush, his average for yards was 2 yards a pass play. And that wasn't anything crazy like him getting sacked or, whatever. He was literally only throwing flat routes.
Yeah.
Like that was it. That was it. So Dak Prescott gives us the best chance to win. I still, to this day, do not know why Jerry Jones traded a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance. Still to this day, do not.
Yeah.
That was a lot. Still to this day, don't know why you trade a 4th for Jonathan Mingo when D-Hop goes for a 5th, then
And you
Amari
gave away
Cooper goes
for a
a 5th.
6th or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's dude. I was like, what's going on? This
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. But yeah, I think Dak is the answer. But if not turned around right, I feel like Dak could suffer the same fate as Tony Romo,
Yeah.
who had the talent and the drive, but just ended up his body broke down before the Cowboys could surround him with the right team.
Yeah. Well, Tony Romo's Jerry Jones' favorite son. I mean, I think he loved him more than any other player he's ever had, if I'm not mistaken. Like, that was his golden child. And sometimes hearing Jerry Jones talk about Dak Prescott, not even sometimes in the most flattering light, I find funny because I think Dak Prescott has led them more to the playoffs in his time with Cowboys than Tony Romo did. I think Dak has led the Cowboys 4 years or something like that, 4 playoff berths, and Tony Romo only did 2, I think. So I just find it kind of funny that Jerry Jones' obsession with Romo statistically doesn't match up with what Dak Prescott is doing. And I agree, like, Dak gets a little bit more flack than he probably deserves, but I was actually kind of shocked just because, like, $60 million, like, man, does Jerry Jones want to bite that bullet? And to his credit, he did. So he must actually like Dak.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, it was about 4 times for Dak or 4 times for Romo.
Oh, okay.
And it's been about 5 times for Dak.
Okay.
Dak had less years to work with, obviously.
Right. Because I think he led them in his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken.
Went as a 4th round pick. And that's why I'm like, why trade away 4th round picks? We were doing so good.
We should acquire nothing but 4th round picks.
Trade your first for a 4th. You know, why not? Why not? That's Jerry logic.
That's a really good audition for your GM role that you're advertising to the Cowboys.
I would trade our 1st round pick, especially if we're going to get Taco Charlton.
Oh, okay. So young quarterbacks, as we talked about, and now it sounds like that you're okay with the Cowboys going younger at quarterback. Obviously, as what we talked about with Dak, you know, he might turn into another Tony Romo and have just a shortened career. But, you know, I almost wonder now, are franchises ruining young quarterbacks? And would the Cowboys be one of those? And I'm also now wondering, as a Raiders fan too, would the Raiders be in the camp that ruins young quarterbacks? Because obviously, as we know, there's a draft that's coming up, obviously at the end of this year, where there's a lot of prominent, you know, future NFL quarterbacks that are going to be drafted. And can these teams do it? And just to name a couple of young quarterbacks in the last few seasons that have had up and down seasons, to say the least. Bryce Young is the most notable one that you mentioned, last year's #1 pick. There was also obviously Anthony Richardson that got benched because he tapped out, couldn't take it. 22-year-old had to leave in the 3rd quarter, I think is what it was.
He was tired.
I don't know how we make that argument. The Bears might be ruining Caleb Williams because they just fired their OC after 10 weeks in, thinking that, you know, Shane Waldron was the guy. Will Levis in Tennessee. I don't know if maybe this is more Will or Tennessee, but Will Levis has been struggling. And then Justin Fields, I kind of threw him in there because him and Trey Lance are kind of similar to me, where Trey Lance for sure, like, you know, for some reason in San Francisco it didn't work out. What, you know, fell below expectation, kind of unfortunate. That's why he's on the Cowboys now. And then Justin Fields, I've always been a fan of, and I always felt like it was the Bears ruining him more than he just wasn't able to cut it in the league. But he did get sat for Russell Wilson, obviously, as what was told in week 7. So what is your thoughts about, like, franchises and these young quarterbacks? Are we taking a step back? Are we, like, what are franchises doing wrong, you think, with these young quarterbacks?
Dude, that is a great question. And I was talking about it a little bit on Tuesday's Out of Pocket on Boom Broadcasting of, like, you know, Caleb Williams, #1 overall pick. Midway through the year, they fired their offensive coordinator, whether the offense was good or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Panthers did the same thing with Bryce Young last year. They fired Josh McCown.
Right.
I mean, that was a significant point. You look at some of the quarterbacks who are, you know, succeeding right now. You know, Kirk Cousins, you know, what he's done with Atlanta is kind of crazy. Lamar Jackson, what he's done with Baltimore, Buffalo's Josh Allen. You have Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud. He's having a little bit of sophomore slump right now. You can go all the way back to Aaron Rodgers. And there's this balance of quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts even. I'm not entirely a huge Jalen Hurts fan for personal and just statistical reasons, but he's still thriving. There's a different approach. But the more I see like young quarterbacks immediately thrown to the wolves, and then organizations get impatient. I can't begin to tell you how many times like quarterbacks are getting dismissed just after 2 years. I mean, if you want to look at like the 2021 and the 2022 NFL draft, the worst part is like a lot of these quarterbacks are getting traded. I mean, Kenny Pickett traded to a backup role for the Philadelphia Eagles. Dude,
Mac Jones, same situation.
Mac Jones traded. Like there's just so many of these like quarterbacks where you're like, oh, well, what's going on? Like, why are they getting dealt and traded? Zach Wilson with the Jets, Trey Lance, both of those names were from the 2021 NFL draft. Meanwhile, Trevor Lawrence is still on his rookie deal. Like that class is on their rookie deal, and you're already investing a high draft pick in these guys. So they're already going to a team with a worse record in most cases. And if they're not going to a team with a worse record, a team had to trade a lot of draft capital. So they're still not getting surrounded with the most talent possible. It's been a huge recipe for disaster. And I think about a lot with like comparing it with college basketball and the NBA. We're seeing a lot of freshmen come out and enter the NBA draft, and they may be a high draft pick, but it takes at least 3 to 5 years before we're like, oh, like they got something. They're actually working towards something. I think it's the same with NFL quarterbacks where maybe they're not leaving college as early as some of those basketball prospects, but they're thrown into a situation where they're like just trying to keep their head above water and receiving. This is a weird time. Like if this was happening 20 years ago, okay, maybe. But now that it's happening in 2024 with all the criticism social media brings and, how many eyes are on them at all times and how impatient people like this is a microwave society. Like we want this done in 30 seconds. We don't want to put anything in the oven and let it bake, let it cook. I mean, we just want to throw it in the microwave and be like, hey, go be Superman. And we're not equipping them to be who they need to be. We aren't equipping them to be a leader of a football team or, have all the tools. It's just, hey, if you don't go out there and immediately just blow everybody's minds, you're trash and you're garbage. And we don't look at the rest of the team.
Right. Man, a lot of that is super great points. I think it's two things that are happening simultaneously. One, it's impatient franchises. And two, it's maybe your scouting department needs to be looked at because some quarterbacks that maybe like you're depending them to be the franchise, maybe they're not retaining your playbook. Maybe they just aren't getting it. They don't understand that their role is basically they're now the CEO of the team and they need to really embrace that. And some can do it, some can't. And I want to look to like Jaden Daniels, as an example of like him flourishing right now in Washington as a rookie. CJ Stroud, I think, is another one, but definitely Daniels. And the reason why is because Cliff Kingsbury, who obviously is a former head coach in the college ranks and former Cardinals head coach, is just a younger mind. And he was basically translating NFL offenses and certainly to like college level for Daniels to then basically get to the NFL and understand it better. And yet I hear some NFL aficionados like, well, that's not going to work. Like, why would you do that? They need to get ready for NFL lingo. And I think, well, that's the smartest thing to do. You get them a bridge language, so to speak, to where they get it quicker in terms of information. And then you introduce like what this really is, the concept or X, Y, and Z, rather than like, no, they need to get our terminology now, which yes, they do. But it's still a huge learning curve. You wouldn't have them go and play in the NFL right now. That's why you have a training camp. That's why you have mini camp. That's why you get them prepared and all that stuff. So I say all that to say, like, to like Bryce Young being benched after like what, his 20th game of his career, that's crazy. And maybe that's more of the Carolina Panthers than it is Bryce Young. And granted, like, yeah, does he need a lot of work? Sure. But like, not a lot of confidence in week 1 and 2 when he played. Sat a little bit. Now he looks like he's playing with a little bit more confidence. But imagine what that did to him to sit him after 20 games of wasn't great and this and that. And he's gone through 3 or 4 different coaches in that time frame.
Yeah, for real.
So that's, to me, what's tough. And like, I look at another quarterback, like, and I brought up Justin Fields as an example. I do not think that Justin Fields was a bad draft pick. Like, he's a bust of a quarterback. Actually, he's very good. I think what sucks is he was with a team that kind of regressed him to the point where he wasn't even confident in his throwing ability. People question, could he throw the ball down the field? I see him go to Pittsburgh and now he's throwing the ball. And I thought he did pretty well. Granted, could he make better connections? I think so. But given some time and experience, which people just want them to know how to do it without ever giving them the experience, like, that's huge. Bryce Young needs that experience to fail to get better. Justin Fields needs that experience to get better off of failure. Like, you're not going to be perfect right off the gates. Peyton Manning still has. Man,
I was about to say,
still has. Yeah, Peyton Manning still has the record for the most interceptions by a rookie quarterback to this day, and yet he's regarded as one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks to step on a field, and that took failure. Even in his last season when he won the Super Bowl, he had his worst statistical career since a rookie, and he still led his team to the Super Bowl based off of like experience and what he can do to manipulate a defense and all this other stuff. That's all super important. And I can understand, like, as you mentioned, it's a microwave society. Like, they want results tomorrow, or yesterday, so to speak. It's like, yes, but like, we need to let them get this information and apply it and use it. And I know that maybe you don't have 5 years, but do you have 2 years, at least 3 years, to let them kind of get going? Even CJ Stroud, who had a great rookie year, as to your credit, kind of regressing a little bit. And as my buddy would say, my co-host here, he says, now that there's film on you, they know how to attack you. Now that there's film, people know how to play you. It's not as easy. Now you got to study film on them, on how you're playing, on how they're playing you, and adjust that. You're not going to come run the league over like Patrick Mahomes, which he's an anomaly. The fact that he's done what he does in his short time, that'll probably never be duplicated again. And to think that teams are kind of like banking on the lottery, so to speak, of Patrick Mahomes and hitting, 5 Super Bowls in 6 years and winning however many within that time frame. Like, it's unrealistic. And I think that's the dynamic that we're seeing of, they want it to happen today, but they don't have the patience to give them experience. And is it sometimes the quarterback? Yeah. Like, I don't think Mitch Trubisky is all he's hyped up to be, and he was the 2nd overall pick. Carson Wentz, he had a great season in Philadelphia 1 year and then just hasn't had another season after that. Like, all things can be true, but for teams to be basically losing out on younger quarterbacks as years go on with all this knowledge of statistics and training and other coaching knowledge and scouting, it's hard for me to believe that all of a sudden we have bad quarterbacks left and right. I think it's more plausible franchises just don't know what to do with these great quarterbacks,
Well, I mean, look at, 3 of the best quarterbacks to play, and we've been able to watch them play, is Peyton Manning. He didn't get benched. He was just out there. Tom Brady didn't get immediately inserted into the game week 1 as a rookie. Like, he had a guy ahead of him, and he just worked hard and he learned and he perfected his craft. Patrick Mahomes didn't even start week 1. Alex Smith was still there.
He sat. Yep.
And so those are 3 situations where the organization looked at what they had and they're like, hey, let's make the right decision. For Peyton, let's keep him out there. We are not going to destroy his confidence. For Tom, he was a 6th-round pick, anomaly. Who knew what was going to happen? For Patrick Mahomes, yeah, you trade up pretty significantly to go get Patrick Mahomes, but you weren't going to go ahead and throw him in there because you had Alex Smith, and we'll see how he progresses. And all 3 organizations benefited greatly because they did that.
Yeah, 100%. We'll see, man. I mean, this next round of quarterbacks that's going to come up in 25, I'm nervous for all of them because I think you can appreciate this as being a Cowboys fan. As a Raiders fan, like, I'd like to think that we are a quarterback away, but can we develop this quarterback? Can we bring him into a situation where they're going to be their best and they're going to thrive? And maybe we do hit a home run and have a franchise guy for the next 10 years. But also, like, I don't also want the shiniest object that's in the draft. You know, I don't believe in, oh yeah, we should get this person first or whatever our first round pick is because he's going to bring a name and all this stuff. Very similar to like Johnny Manziel. Yeah, he's flashy and it's just a name. And yeah, this is what we're going to do for other reasons. And yet it's a catastrophic disaster. I'd much rather, like, what do the scouts say? Do we trust the scouts? Like, who have they hit on before that we can trust? You know, like, I would much rather feel better about, like, maybe we don't get Shador Sanders because XYZ, but we waited around and got this other quarterback and he actually was better for us in the long run than whatever else. As an example, I'm not saying Sanders is not going to be a hit in the NFL. I have no idea. I'm just saying as an example of, like, I hope that my team isn't the one that doesn't know how to develop a quarterback, and more or less of, like, we surround them and give them that ability to fail and have that experience, because people want everything to be perfect. And I don't think they realize what they're asking for with that. Like, not one person has learned lessons off of perfection, but everyone has learned a lot of lessons from failures. You know, what was your get back up moment? What was the moment where you dusted yourself off and went to work? Everyone has a story for that, but no one said, gee, no, I got it off the first shot and just never looked back. So,
hey, speaking from experience, I never hit the first shot. Can't even hit a trash can when I waddle up a ball of paper and just
Kobe
miss. Hey, if you miss, you gotta say LeBron.
Oh, that's a funny one. I didn't know that one. That's really good. Okay, so I want to round out with, obviously, this NFL season with some teams. I think it's been a really good parody on the year, I would say. And I think a team that I'm rooting for that is not my Raiders is the Detroit Lions. Just because 5-1, the Motor City, just the fact that not very long ago they were an 0-16 franchise, one of the laughingstocks, to be where they're at now, where arguably they can go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs probably today, and they might come out with a victory. That's how good they are on both sides of the ball. But the Chiefs, though, still undefeated, I think is very surprising with the way that they're winning. Regardless if it's ugly or pretty, they find a way. And in the NFL, wins are not cheap. So I'm curious, Michael, do you think the Chiefs are going to three-peat? Do you think the Lions have a shot at winning the Super Bowl? Or do you think it's going to be someone else in the field that wins the Super Bowl?
Dude, for the Chiefs, this is remarkable. Like, I do top quarter rankings on Now Pocket every Tuesday. I'm like, every week, I'm like, they could lose, but I'm like, I'll probably still have them at number one. Like, to two-peat, go back to back, and then to go undefeated in your quest for a third. Like, this team is hungry. Like, the amount of talent, the amount of knowledge, the amount of wisdom, the amount, like, they've overcome injury. Like, this is unheard of.
Right.
Detroit, and they're doing really well right now. They're probably playing better than any other team. They have the best point differential. They're the only team who has outscored their opponents by over 100 points as of this point in the season.
Wow.
8-1, like, they're on a 7-game win streak. You look at them beating Minnesota and they're beating Green Bay. Like, they're doing everything they can. But for some reason, I just don't believe in them to take that leap until you can prove it to me. It's like, you know, people are like, oh, until the Cowboys can prove they can get to the NFC title game. Like, they can't. I feel the same about Detroit of, like, once you get to the Super Bowl, okay, I'll believe in you. They have a great opportunity this year. They have a great opportunity, unless San Fran gets healthy. But dude, if it's not Kansas City, if it's not Detroit, I really am looking at two teams, and it's Buffalo because now they got Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
Josh Allen is turning over the ball less and less. James Cook is running the ball. That Buffalo defense is still performing really well. And Baltimore. Like, how do we allow Derrick Henry and by we, not only Dallas Cowboys, but like the rest of the NFL,
Right.
allowed Derrick Henry to team up with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And in addition, they have Zay Flowers on the outside. Rashad
And
Bateman is playing.
They just acquired Deontay Johnson, and he's not even formed in the offense quite yet.
I mean, usually this Baltimore team's been built on defense. It's been built on Lamar, Mark Andrews, and just, whoever was at running back who would always get hurt. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. But now they have a legitimate number one running back who stays healthy. Knock on wood, don't want to wish anything on him. And they have a legitimate threat on the outside who can zoom past anybody. And dude, this is crazy. Like this Baltimore team is actually constructed to play the Chiefs really, really close. And honestly, like if Lamar doesn't miss a wide open target in the end zone, and if Isaiah Likely's shoe size is half a shoe less, they beat the Chiefs, and we're not having this conversation of them being undefeated because they start the season 0-1. But for the Ravens to start the season 0-2 and then get it together against Dallas and then keep that consistency, so on and so forth. They've only had one slip up against the division rival, the Browns. Those happen against division opponents. I've never been high on Lamar Jackson as a player, but seeing him in this offense, seeing now that he has a solid team around him, it's like, whoa, I'm scared.
Yeah. I feel like that with the Bills. Funny enough that you say that, because the Bills, and especially Sean McDermott, remind me of Andy Reid when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. They were always deep in the playoffs. NFC Championship game, just can't get over until that one year that they did get over. And I feel like the Bills are on the cusp of that. And I agree, like the fact that they acquired Amari Cooper, and as soon as that he comes back, because he's been out the last 2 weeks, if he comes back and becomes like any remotely focal point of that offense, like what they intend to, the Bills could be a team that don't sleep on them. They might get you. And especially if the Bills see the Chiefs for what is it, the fourth year in a row, they might actually get this one, because how many times can you play an opponent before they beat you, before you finally get one over on them? So do you have an NFC and an AFC team that you suspect will meet in the Super Bowl?
So I don't want to predict against the Chiefs. I really don't, but I'm not going to be that guy who's like, hey, let me get the safe options.
Sure.
I'm going to go Baltimore.
Okay.
I'm going to go Baltimore. For the NFC, I am going to go San Francisco. This team has not been healthy.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is still on that rookie deal. Christian McCaffrey just got back. And so you're going to have Christian McCaffrey, who hasn't had a beating this year, who is going to be able, hopefully, to be healthy for quite some time. They struggled, but you got Ricky Purcell, you got Debo, you got George Kittle. This is their window. Like San Francisco is their window. They just re-signed their corner Lenore to a big contract as of last night. I mean, this is what the 49ers are, and if they don't want their window to close quite yet, this is their time, and I think that motivates them. And hopefully San Francisco, Baltimore, it's not going to be the Hard Bowl, but hopefully the lights stay on this time.
Well, conspiracy theory, someone pulled that plug.
It was Cody.
Yeah, I was there. I was 100% there.
He didn't want the 49ers to win.
No, absolutely not. I was glad that the Ravens won, because I don't want to hear it from Niner fans, even though half my family is Niner fans, ironically enough. I hate to say it, man. I think if it's not Detroit, I don't see. So I think the Niners are too injured if they were to represent the NFC. They would have to get hot and then just go on this run where they, leap past the Packers, which I think the Packers can get them. And they would have to get past Detroit, which I know they already did, but they were healthier last year. They had Ayuk, they had Samuel, and I don't know. I think they're too injury riddled, and I think that we're excited that CMC is back on their end, but I can't trust that he'll finish the season healthy just because one game. So that's what I'll say. But if it's not Detroit, because I'm really high on Detroit this year, like what I saw, the moxie from them to come back against the Texans and shut out the Texans in the second half of of the Sunday Night Football game, like absolutely crazy. And I think that's a game that you put a pin in and said that was the point where we knew that they were for real or that they were going to be unstoppable. That reminds me of that game because, in my opinion, I had the Texans as coming into the season before a game was played as potentially a number one team in the AFC because I love Stroud. I thought their defense was really good. I thought they had the weapons. I thought that they would run the AFC just with all that they had. And then they came with injuries. CJ Stroud takes a step back, as we know today. The fact that Detroit did what they did, and despite 5 interceptions, they still won. And they did it in bullying fashion in the second half. So if it's not the Lions, I hate to say it because I know you're a Cowboys fan, I think the Eagles have a really good shot because it's very similar to San Francisco. This is their window. I don't think they get back if they don't go this year. You got Kellen Moore, a really good offensive coordinator. Their defense has been playing really well. Nick Sirianni, I don't think is as good as a coach as people think he is. I think it's more this team is just outperforming what his coaching ability is. But if there's
that hurts them.
Exactly my point. But they both have been at the Super Bowl once before. Now you get that nervousness. You know what it's like to get back there. It's a little bit different now once you go back a second time and like, okay, I think we got this now. I do think experience would play a part into that, but I think that Detroit is the better of the two teams, though. Like, if they were to head-to-head and they, like, for the NFC crown, I think the Lions are the better team. I think that they'd have an answer for the Eagles. In the NFC. In the AFC, I agree, man. I don't know how I can pick anybody else but the Chiefs. It's either the Chiefs, the Ravens, or the Bills, and I trust the Chiefs out of the three of them because they've been doing it all these years. And every year when I say, oh, it's not going to be the Chiefs, it's not going to be the Chiefs, they're always in the damn Super Bowl. So
they're hungry. First ever team to three-peat.
Oh, yeah. So you would think like they would be complacent. And no, they're even more amped up for this season for the three-peat, be the first ever. And they have a really good shot at doing it. Like if they get Isaiah Pacheco back and keep the team as is, like knock on wood, little to no injury for them, they could probably do it.
Imagine they're doing this with Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah. This world, they forget real quickly about why they let you go, huh? Because the reason why he wasn't on the team anymore is because of off the field issues, and now all's forgiven. Come on back, we need you now. So kind of interesting. All right, so you are saying in the NFC, give me the Niners. You said and
Niners and Ravens.
Niners and Ravens. Wow, that would be that'd be a really good matchup. I think that'd be really phenomenal. To be truthful, like another repeat, that'd be really good.
Yeah, to not go on the Chiefs Lions, easy pick right now.
Sure.
Niners Ravens is what I would call.
Well, there's a lot of people's bets that probably won't hit because the statistics of those two even getting in based off of like everything else still pretty low. It's not like it's a surefire thing, So who knows? All right, man. So basically pretty much towards the end of everything, but I did want to chit chat with you a little about wrestling because you mentioned you're a wrestling fan. We talked offline a little bit that we both got this love for wrestling. So I actually have a couple of start bench cut questions for you, wrestling edition. Now, again, I'm mainly WWE. So these are probably going to be around WWE. And I don't know how much I'm not going to disrespect saying that you don't know anything about the WWE, but my timeline is like right as the Attitude Era kicked off. And then I kind of didn't watch wrestling during like the early part of the Ruthless Aggression era. And then I want to say when Daniel Bryan got hot, I started watching it again.
Okay.
All right. So not too much of a break, but I've caught up with it quite a bit. I remember when Vince McMahon was running the show, and then I remember when Triple H started running the show. So that's my timeline of it. Okay.
All right. I got you.
So the first one is WrestleMania matches. Okay. All right. So first WrestleMania match, start bench cut. Rock versus Hogan, WrestleMania 18. Daniel Bryan versus The Authority, WrestleMania 30. Or Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 40. Start bench cut.
So this is important. When you say Bryan versus The Authority at WrestleMania 30, because Bryan had an opening match against Triple H, to get himself into the triple threat against
I'm
Batista
talking
and
about
Orton.
the main event when he won the titles.
It's a triple. Ooh.
Yeah, stakes are high now, aren't they?
So,
in fact, just to even make it fun, we'll just include both those matches together. The whole thing, because it is true. Like, you can't say the triple threat without the singles match that led to it. So we'll just say both of them included as just one finale, because that's essentially what it was.
So what I will say is, as iconic of a moment as the stare off was, and this might be a little bit slighted because of some, personal outside the ring issues that this person's had.
Yeah.
As much as a fan of I am as The Rock, I would have to cut Rock Hogan. I think the electricity was off the charts. That you're not going to capture lightning in a bottle like that again. In terms of the actual match, meh.
Okay.
I'm gonna bench the Daniel Bryan. It's one of the coolest stories. You just mentioned you got back into it as Bryan got hot. WrestleMania 30, Miracle on Bourbon Street. The way that they told the story from August of that year all the way through. Bryan wasn't supposed to be in that match, and the fans literally put him in that match. It was awesome. But I'm looking at what happened afterwards and Bryan's neck injury as something that really deterred probably what could have been an era-defining moment. But this match, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, WrestleMania 40 was defining. I was a Roman guy. I still am a Roman guy. I mean, he could have held that title 5 more years and that would have been great. But I couldn't even deny how special that Cody Roman match was, man. Even the night before with the tag team match and how they played that story so perfectly throughout the entire time, how intricately layered. I said from the beginning that, WWE didn't have a homegrown star. They need to get somebody. But since Cody wasn't immediately given the title at WrestleMania 39, a year after he debuted and had to work all his way back, and the way they told the story, it's people have said the Avengers Endgame, the Undertaker shows up. Dude, Seth Rollins, Roman, having the opportunity to win the match or get his revenge on Seth, and that's what
takes the revenge.
That's what cracked him, bro. The amount of storytelling in that match, and it was really the signal of Triple H had his hand on WrestleMania 38 a little bit. He has his hand on WrestleMania 39, but WrestleMania 40 was the thing. Vince is gone, TKO's over it. Triple H gets full creative control, and that was his first season of, hey, this is mine, and just knocked it out of the park, man. That's going to be something we remember for quite some time.
I will say WrestleMania 40, top to bottom, night 1 and 2 was probably one of my top 3 best WrestleManias. And I remember watching the very first TLC at WrestleMania, and that was eye-opening, never seen that before. Don't know if we'll ever see it again. And then WrestleMania 19 was okay, but really the one match that I fell in love with at WrestleMania 19 was the Rock and Stone Cold final match where Stone Cold turns and went corporate. That was interesting. Those are probably my top 2 moments that I remember, and 40 is up there because it was goosebumps. I'm sitting on my couch in my 30s watching this thing I'm 10 years old all over again. It was great. So all right, I got another one for you. Storylines of the WWE primarily. Okay, start, bench, cut. NWO invasion of WCW, which is kind of weird. I just said WWE, but I threw in WCW. They own the asset, so it's fine.
That's fair.
So the NWO invasion of WCW, the Bloodline storyline currently, including the start to today. I want to include the whole thing because that's a huge in this one. Or the entirety of the Stone Cold McMahon feud.
So I'm gonna cut. This is tough, man. This is tough. I didn't know what you were going for. I thought you were going wrestlers, when you said start bench cut, I'm like, okay, I can, pick my favor or whatever. Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna cut NWO,
Okay.
WCW. Reason I do that, yes, it was real. The way they portrayed it was awesome, but quickly got diluted. Like
Yeah.
it didn't stand the test of time. I'm gonna bench Austin McMahon. And I give
Okay.
Austin McMahon that edge because it was either the NWO win the Monday Night War or Austin McMahon win the Monday Night War, and
Yeah.
somebody won the Monday Night War. You couldn't define Stone Cold, you couldn't define Mr. McMahon, and you couldn't define other stories without that feud.
Right.
And it was pretty consistent. And also, like, one of your favorite WrestleManias, like WrestleMania 17, when Austin turned corporate, like, you don't get that moment without that feud.
Right.
Which is huge. Like, nobody saw that coming. Honestly, like,
him to line up with Vince McMahon were win against everything we had thought like that Austin would do. Yeah.
Dude, I would even go back and watch it like, over and over. And I'm still just like looking, I'm like, what did I just watch? Like, this feels so out of place. The start is the bloodline. I mean, dude, I don't know of a story other than Kane Undertaker that just lasted this long.
Yeah.
But in terms of like just never taking a break, dude, this, like, Roman didn't need to be on TV every week. Roman didn't need to wrestle every week for this story to continue. And the fact that we haven't went away from it, even after Roman's title run has ended, it gave us Roman's title run. It gave us so many great moments. Honorary Uso. I mean, dude, just the amount of stuff. And now that we're all the way circling back to where we're actually getting like, the honorary Uso back and, the real bloodline and how it elevated everybody in there. Like, it elevated Jey Uso. It elevated Sami Zayn. Like, elevated Solo.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that it's also created jobs for Tama Tonga. Tonga Loa was released by WWE 15 years ago as Camacho, and he had no path there. Tama Tonga was just chilling in Japan. Jacob Fatu
is a scare. Here's the funny thing. When the first clip I saw when Roman Reigns returned and him and Fatu kind of like went face to face, it actually gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh man, like Fatu has been an animal since he's entered in the WWE. And also too, he's had a lot of like weight loss. So he's really like just a different style of wrestler than he was before. And I was like, oh man, this would be fun to watch. And so I'm really glad that you mentioned him, because I think like the fact that they use him as like the person who's so in love with Solo is kind of interesting, because I'm like, man, when's the hat going to drop when this guy's like, wait a minute, I don't need Solo, because he's that good of a wrestler, I think, or at least that good of a talent.
And if you notice, I mean, Roman, who was his enforcer? Solo.
Right.
When Roman dropped the ball, Solo stepped up.
Right.
I think they can do the same thing with Jacob Fatu being Solo's enforcer. And once, Solo falls, Jacob's there to step up.
Yeah. This is one of the coolest things, I think. And I think, too, the theme of these two were basically the bloodline. Like, I may not be the biggest Roman Reigns fan. I think he's a good wrestler. Is he the most entertaining that I've ever watched? No. But, like, the fact that, as you mentioned, he doesn't have to be on weekly programming, and he feels like he's at the show because of this storyline. That's how powerful it is. And the fact that you don't even have to have watched it from start to finish. The fact that it kind of leaves you breadcrumbs along social media, and it's just woven into the WWE in a way to where, like, before you know it, we're like almost 5 years into this storyline. Like, I can't remember a storyline outside of Austin and McMahon where that storyline just took so long. And it wasn't even that it took so long. It was just kind of touched on, and then they moved on to something else. And they kind of touched on it, moved on to something else. The bloodline has been consistent. It has literally been like a prequel, the sequel. Now we got, a branch off series here. It is like all the sum of like a movie or a TV show that I've never seen WWE do. And it's really cool that they are taking their time with it, like really ironing out this story. Like, it doesn't even feel like it's going to end at Survivor Series. It just feels like we have another stake in the ground for what's to come next. Like, that's what it feels like.
And here's the edge, right? It's the microwave thing.
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago, we could have had, a longer story and it would have just been accepted. And social media now, if people get bored, like they'll do it. Like they'll just complain every time. They haven't gotten bored of the bloodline. Like
Mm-hmm.
even in recent memory, I love the Dom, Rhea, Liv,
Yeah, that's fun.
Damian and Rhea, branching off. Like I love that whole story. But you're even hearing now, like, oh, this is getting old. Like, and I'm like, I'm personally enjoying it, but I'm hearing those rumblings. You don't hear those rumblings with the bloodline.
No, I almost don't know what we would do when it ends, because eventually they're going to like shelf it or they'll do something. It's going to come to a conclusion eventually. And I don't know what we're going to do when that day comes, because like this needs to go forever. Like this is the coolest thing I've seen. And if they can continue to go for another few more years, how cool will that be that this is always now etched within the WWE? It's one of the coolest projects I've ever seen them like take on, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So you mentioned you thought I would tell you wrestlers, but I do want to know though, who's like your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers? And I will say you can choose anybody. I don't want to single it to only WWE or whatever. If you want to choose an old TNA, an old, ECW or whatever, like who is your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers for Michael?
For Michael.
My
Mount Rushmore, dude, there's so many, and I'm probably going to leave somebody out.
Yeah. That's the reason why Mount Rushmore is exclusive, man.
For me, man, you can't have it for me, for Michael. Don't want to bash anybody else's Mount Rushmore. You got to have the Undertaker. You have to have the Undertaker. He is the ultimate guy. He's done it all. He did it longer than his body would allow.
Mm-hmm.
How much respect he had in the locker room. Uncanny. He's got to be there. The other one who has to be there is somebody who inspired literally this entire generation, is Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
And is still inspiring them as his work in NXT as the guy down there.
Mm-hmm.
And the transformation too. Like he has two chapters.
Yeah.
He has the pre-save. Yeah. I mean, let's call it what it is, pre-save. Like, he was, you made the rules and we will break them. And, posing naked with the title and all the things. And then you have the post-save where he came back in 2002 after 4 years off with a back injury, newfound life, and wrestled, a good 10 years. Like that is huge. Like that is unheard of. So
arguably his second run is probably better than his first run. That there's an argument to be made that I think that's the case, because that's how good Shawn Michaels was. He had two different halves of his career. The second half was probably better.
That's a good topic. I might steal that for my wrestling podcast.
You go ahead. That's cool.
I might steal that. No, sorry about that.
No, it's cool.
I got permission on air. You guys heard that.
Yes.
There's a lot of people you could put in those 3 to 4 spot. I personally love The Rock. I don't think he was there long enough to be there. I would almost lean towards Austin. Austin's career was, cut short a little bit too. But he really won the Monday Night War, which is huge. Could also make the same case for Triple H if you include, what he did, but I'll put Austin there. And the fourth one, I mean, you could, throw in Hogan, you could throw in Ric Flair, and both have their claim for that. You could throw in John Cena, also has his claim for that. But I'm going to throw in Roman. I mean, we haven't seen a guy hold a modern day championship like that for that long ever. He carried through the pandemic.
Yeah.
He carried outside of the pandemic. And you saw like his character develop and evolve. And you saw, like, we just talked about the bloodline story. I feel like Roman has truly entered into that Mount Rushmore and among the all-time greats. So, probably just forgot like 20 different wrestlers I could have put there. But if I had to say, it's Taker, Michaels, Stone Cold, and your tribal chief, the only tribal chief.
That's right.
Roman Reigns.
I dig it. That's a really, really good list. And I mean, a lot of people would agree that Roman Reigns should be on there. And again, I don't think it's basically like what his talent is in the ring, just what he's done. And since his time in the Shield, and when they tried to do him as a single, like a baby face before he really turned into Roman Reigns, like completely resurrected and changed a lot. And in fact, I love watching the wrestlers like documentary on A&E where it's like the bio of the athlete. And I think they did a Roman Reigns one.
It was so
phenomenal, really good. And I love too the Rivals one when they featured him as well. A really good perspective of like, I'm just going to be who I am. And the fact that Roman Reigns acting as, you know, himself, Joe, is basically what won over everybody. And ironically enough, Austin, who's probably one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, mentioned that if you're not yourself, you're going to get they'll sniff you out. And Roman being as authentic as he is and just being entertaining as all get out. I think it's crazy because his career doesn't seem that long, and yet like he feels like he just arrived, and this is how well he's doing, you know. So
absolutely, like blown away, man. Like also fighting back from leukemia.
Yeah, for real. Actually, it's in remission, so technically, like he's still living with it, and he's just living his life to make sure like he doesn't come back, and he's still at an elite level. Granted, like the travel for a lot of the WWE is not the same, so he doesn't have to take the nightly bumps that cut a lot of these guys' careers short, like, you know, Austin, or I don't want to group The Rock in, because I agree his WWE career was pretty short. Like he's been here and there, but like he's been an actor longer than he's been a wrestler, so it's really kind of hard to group him in there. But like Shawn Michaels used to do weekly spots on 2 different shows. Hogan, when he turned back into the American Dream or whatever his yellow and red one was, he came back and was doing like weekly Monday Night Raw hits. And at like 60 years old, and now look at him, all that compound injury is taken over. And Roman not needing to be there every week and showing up on pay-per-views, or PEEs now, I guess is what they call it. Like that's the route, and that's going to preserve him, which is great. So
yeah, and we get to reap the benefits.
Yeah, for real. Like being this old and I'm still into it, like I'm a little kid. This is great. Like I can't tell you how many nights where I would watch Monday Night Raw when I was like growing up. I was like 10 or 11 when I first watched it, and just captivated and thinking that it was all real until like obviously you find out like, oh no, none of it's actually real. But like, man, that guy just fell off of the top of the steel cage. Are we sure it's not real? Like I don't look very fake to me, you know.
I never use the 4-letter F word.
Sure.
Never.
No, well, actually, so the cool thing about like, because I have a subscription to Peacock, and so I get to see all of the WWE library, and so I get to watch like all the documentaries of my favorite wrestlers and all that stuff. And it's like a really good point was, look, everyone knows it's not real, it's predetermined, but movies are predetermined, and you go to watch them anyway. So what's the difference? It's because people want to have this hierarchy of like, oh, you're watching that wrestling stuff again, which is what my dad used to say. You're watching that wrestling stuff again. And I was like, it's good. Like I'm lost in this world, and let me be. Like I still love it. So
it's scripted. The characters, when it's done right, like Triple H is doing right now, I mean, you just get to follow it and escape from the real world. And like I've had the opportunity to commentate a wrestling show locally. I've had the opportunity to interview wrestlers on my podcast. I've had the opportunity to meet wrestlers at conventions. I always tell people it's probably the best thing that ever bonded me and my dad. And he's a Cowboys fan, so like we bond over that. But like it's really been wrestling that's created just so many moments and memories that hopefully I get to pass down with my kids.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing about the WWE with it's like being purchased by TKO, the investment in just like the storylines and stuff, whenever it is that you have little ones that are old enough to watch WWE, one, it should be program friendly for them, because you got NXT on CW now, and SmackDown, I think, still on Fox, or
SmackDown's moved to USA now.
Okay. There we
and
go.
Then Raw will move to Netflix in January.
Yeah, that's probably more for our style, because I remember when Raw was PG-14 before they went PG, and that was interesting. So Michael, man, this has been a real treat. I'm curious though, like for Boom Broadcasting, what's like your plan for the next like few years? What's your, like, I know that you mentioned that it's been a whirlwind 4 months, but before you know it, man, 4 months is going to turn into a year, 2 years, 3 years. What's your plan? What's it looking like for you? Like in the few years that you're hoping to take this place?
Yeah, man. I don't want to get bogged down on, 3-5 years into it. Like, I don't like to overthink or get overwhelmed or, hey, we're not hitting all our goals right now. It'd be tough. One of the things I really want to do is I want to give back to our content creators. So hopefully we get to a point where we can monetize. That's not why we do it. But it's just be another way to say thank you to them, and do that through highlighting some, businesses, highlighting some people who, do a lot of stuff. If there were, advertisements or commercials that we could put on to help give them exposure, not only to their local area, but also just, to the entire country, and really just help each other out. We'll eventually distribute to audio platforms and, potentially grow to, other channels as well. But man, I just want to keep providing people an escape and allow them to have a passionate, a space to talk about their passions. And I've always said, like, this should add to your life. This shouldn't subtract from it. And yeah, there's work, there's effort. My team and myself definitely don't spare any of that. I've been going nonstop. I'll probably record a podcast right after this, and I'll just keep running and I'll keep churning. But dude, it's so worth it to see like people actually enjoying it and taking time. Like, if 5 people watch this, if 5 people watch one of my shows and take time out of their day, time they can't get back, it's worth it, man. It's really worth it.
Yeah, that's really cool. My favorite thing to say is I'm just doing this until ESPN calls, because that's the goal. But it is, I think that's the cool thing too, just keep in perspective. It's the fun of it. It's not all about money. I mean, it'd be great to get paid for it, but the fact that you have a bandit of individuals that are all kind of coming together, and you even telling me offline, like, even when you were taking time away, you had people that stepped up and helped and did things that, you didn't even ask them to do that. They just took it upon themselves. And the fact that there's that camaraderie there with your network, I think it's really cool, man. So I know that like 3 years is pretty daunting. I know I always get people asking like, what's a 5-year plan? And very similar, like, I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. So what am I thinking about 5 years for? But if with your vision, I mean, this turned into something that was really quick in 4 months. So I can only imagine what you might have up your sleeve, for the next 8 months to make it a full year around the calendar. So very interested.
Yeah, I'm excited for that 1 year anniversary. We'll have a big birthday.
There you go. Big 1 year birthday. And then, so you mentioned about what you want to do for your content creators. So if there's somebody that's listening that is wondering, like, what do I need to do? Or I just don't know if I want to do sports podcasting or content creating in general, what would be some advice that maybe that you wish someone gave to you and that you would want to pass on to somebody else?
Do it. As Nike as that sounds, I mean, just do it. Like, I was so worried, and this is after I graduated broadcasting, I didn't really have anything. And I was working at YMCA camp. I was around a bonfire with like the guests of the weekend, and somebody asked like what I wanted to do, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I like, I graduated with a broadcasting degree. I don't know what to do, whatever. And she's like, well, start a podcast. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't have the equipment. I don't have a microphone. I don't have this. I don't have that. And she's like, so just do it.
Yeah.
Like, just get it out there. I'm like, what if it's bad? She's like, just do it. And that is the advice I give everybody, is like, your first episode, my first episode was garbage. Like, it was bad. If you could find it somewhere, please don't give feedback on that. It was bad. I mean, it was recorded with like a 12-year-old like video game headset. It was bad, bro. Second one, worse. Third one, I was like, oh, maybe I'll try this. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, okay, let me invest in a microphone at this point. Let me get headphones. And, slowly and surely everything grew, because I was willing to invest time, I've invested, at the time, a little bit of money, now a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it's slowly getting better. And if you look at something, it's not perfect. Like we were saying, like a quarterback isn't going to get on the field. Even if they're the number 1 overall pick and had all these expectations, they're not going to get on the field and knock you out of the park.
Right.
There's not perfection. There's progression.
Right.
And if you're just loving it and enjoying it, and you should go for it. Like I would love to see it. And Boom is here. To obviously, within reason, we can't, do 100 shows a week right now. Maybe that time comes. But platforms like that are built for, encouraging people, especially at the younger start, who make genuine content like, you and Drew do. Like, you guys do really good stuff. Wish he had been on today, but soon. We'll get it soon.
I'm telling you, man, he's dying that he wish that he isn't a part of this episode, because he would have loved this, especially hearing that you've got a bunch of guys that love to talk all different, like baseball is his sport. Like, he loves talking football. Basketball is the thing he's coaching, so he loves talking about that. He would have had a get down on this episode. So we'll definitely have to line things up so we can do it again. But yeah, really kind words though that you pay to us. But again, though, like what you done in 4 months, nothing to scoff at. And to be truthful, your advice couldn't have been any more like accurate. Like, just do it. I mean, if we all just fell to our own thoughts about why we shouldn't do it, nothing would ever get done, And to be truthful, sometimes, like for me, sometimes I think about doing the show and it's almost like, oh man, I got to do the show. And then when I'm done, I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I did the show, And then also, if you don't do it, you don't get to meet unique humans. Like, I got to meet you, Michael, and you reached out and we just kind of connected. And, you get to meet some interesting people. That's not all bad out there, but like, if you don't do it, you don't meet them, And I think that's the interesting thing, is there's a lot of people that have the same perspective or different opinions, and that's okay to like chat with them. And it also just has a unique thing to hear people's stories. Like, I probably enjoyed more chit chatting about like what's going on behind the scenes with you than the sports show, even though the sports content's super fun. Like, just getting to hear someone's story about how they got to where they are today is really interesting to me. So,
yeah. And it's not done yet. It's not over yet.
The story's not over. Still writing. So, Michael, I just want to say, man, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been a really cool experience to just chat, man. I was really thankful that you invited me on a couple of your shows, and you're doing something right, man. 4 months into it, and you guys are growing the way you do. And the fact that to think about it getting bigger is kind of a task that you're trying to take one step at a time. I'm really honored that I got to catch you on the ground floor, so to speak. So when you get to the big, the top of the mountain, I can say, I had a really cool episode with that guy, and he's as genuine as he sounds. So I appreciate, man, for accepting my invite and coming on the show. Thank you.
Hey, I hope there's more collaborations in the future. You're going to be invited for sure. So,
love it.
As long as you take them, I'll take you on, man. I appreciate.
You know what? This whole time zone thing is really tricky. Like, poor guy. Like, it's right now it's 10:30 your time almost over there, and you're going to record a whole episode. You've got to do all your thing to it. I have the luxury of being on the West Coast, where I have a 3-hour time frame. So we will definitely have more of these. And I mean, we can't not have Drew on here, because you guys would get along and chat about everything under the sun. And I think that's the one thing I more so than anything wish he was here too, because you guys would have vibed well together. You guys would dig each other. So
bet. I appreciate it. We'll get it. We'll get it soon.
We will. Eventually.
Drew, we missed you.
Yeah. Michael, please plug your stuff, man. Where can they find you? What's the handles, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So, dude, so many places. The main one, guys, if you enjoyed this content, Boom Broadcasting on YouTube, help us get to that 500 number. Again, it's free. Like, we don't ask for money. It's just a way to say thank you to not only me, but the rest of the team. And we put out a lot of content, like Cody was mentioning earlier. So that's Boom Broadcasting on YouTube. There's a Facebook, there's an Instagram, there's a TikTok, there's an X/Twitter, whatever you prefer to call it. For Boom Broadcasting, there's also Out of Pocket. My personal X is B_Michael Davis. Follow me, hit me up, tell me how you found me through this episode, and would love to chat with you about sports, wrestling, or anything else under the sun. So that's the main places to find me and find my team. But Cody, I appreciate you greatly, my friend. Thank you.
No, man, it was a true honor. For those listening on the podcast, all of his stuff will be listed and linked down in the episode card of wherever you're listening, whether it's Spotify, Apple, iHeart, like I said at the top of the show. If you're watching on YouTube, it's also going to be in the episode card down below for all of Michael's stuff and Boom Broadcasting and all the other platforms that he is available on. They will all be on there. So I highly encourage you guys to go check out Michael and what him and his team is doing. For Drew Code Sports Talk, guys, don't forget, all of our stuff is going to be down there below. I don't want to bog everyone down with our handles. It's all available in the episode card. And again, Michael, huge thank you, man. I appreciate it. We will see you guys next week. And Michael, I can't wait to see what you guys are doing. I know you guys will be popping off an episode probably within a few hours. So I'll just wait up until it drops because I'm sure it's happening.
Hey, appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right. Be well, everybody.